When she was out of town shopping at an Asian mart, my culinary teacher from last year was so nice enough to think of me and buy me some premium white miso. When she gave it to me, she recommended that I make some miso soup, so I decided the first dish I would make with this would be miso soup. So I went to Pinterest, I went to Google, and I started looking into how to make miso soup, and then I realized that all of the ingredients pretty much that you need to make miso soup is not around here. At least not stuff to make it authentically, but when I looked, I couldn't find dashi, I couldn't find dashi stock, I couldn't find wakame, I couldn't find kombu, I couldn't find anything. Anything. So I just tried my best to get what I could. So I got green onions, a Japanese leek. I tried to replace the wakame with some nori. That was kind of a bad choice on retrospect, but close enough. And then I also got some silken tofu. And I was able to find shiitake mushrooms, but they were not dried, which was the recommended thing. So, I mean, halfway there. So I started by putting about 4 cups of water in a stock pan, and then I realized that that stock pan was too big, so I had to pour it into a smaller one. Then I set to preparing the nori, so I just cut it into quarters, and the thing that's supposed to happen, I dropped it in the water. It's supposed to expand like up to 5 times its original size after like 5 to 25 minutes. I let it soak like this while I went and I cut the rest of the vegetables up. Spoiler alert, it didn't expand, but you know. This is my first time ever working with a leek, and when I cut it open, it just looked like a big old green onion, and when I tasted it, that's pretty much what it tasted like. Interesting. Learn something new every day. After I cut up the leek, I moved on to the green onions. I cut those up like the whole thing, the white part and the green part, and I set those aside. I would not be boiling those in the beginning, those were just garnish. And then I decided that julienning a carrot sounded good, so I did that. Just a little bit though, not a lot of carrot, just a little bit. Next, I got the tofu and I cut them into cubes, just to soak up any extra flavor. And that was the final spread. There is the seaweed that never expanded. When I did this, it just made it really soft and it ended up like dissolving and breaking apart. So I wouldn't recommend using this and putting it on high heat, which I probably should have known. I was just being really optimistic. As I said, I did not have dashi, so I didn't have dashi stock. So I just used bouillon cubes as a replacement, which isn't really a replacement, but I tried. And then I prepared my miso in a separate bowl. You get your miso, you put it in, and then since you can't really boil it because that'll do something bad to it, you just put it in hot water and dissolve it, and then you mix it in after it's cooled down. Once the water was boiling, I started adding the carrots, I added in the seaweed, the leeks, and it looked like that. And then next, I added in the shiitake mushrooms, and I decided to add in some udon noodles too. I figured, why not? I love udon noodles. And then I added in the tofu and mixed that in. I let that cook for about 3 minutes, and then I took it off and I let it cool some. And then after it had cooled for about 10 minutes ish, I mixed in that miso paste. And when I tested it, it was still a little bit too light for me, so I added in some more miso paste, stir that in to dissolve to add some extra umami flavor. And then I noticed that the broth was looking a bit better, so it was time to plate it up. I know that sadly I wasn't able to use a lot of the authentic or the originally intended parts. I know that the broth didn't end up quite as beautiful as it should have been because the seaweed got all broken in and it made it murky looking. It probably didn't taste authentic, but it really did not taste bad at all. This was actually a pretty refreshing soup, and the next day I had some after lunch, and even when it was cold, it was really good. It was I don't know, it was a light soup. Even though it used miso, I expected it to be super heavy, but it wasn't heavy at all. It was actually really nice. I did like this, and I'd like to make it authentically sometime if I can find the ingredients.